keynote today is the chairman of CrowdStrike, Gerhard Watzinger. Personally, I had the great honor of being the CEO of a company that he was the chairman of in 2018 and 2019. He's an amazing European and has presided over CrowdStrike for many years as chairman. And you'll hear some fascinating insights around the growth of that extraordinary NASDAQ-listed company and his own personal views on leadership, as well as a quite remarkable racing career. I hope you enjoy this as much as I enjoyed interviewing him.
A key reason why CrowdStrike is very successful, it's the orientation on long-term goals versus the temptation to fulfill short-term goals.
What are the 2 or 3 things that you hold valuable as a leader?
The first one is what I call the say-do ratio. In an ideal case, it's a 1-to-1. You say something and you do it. The second one is trust and verify until you trust. Hacking is not about destruction anymore. Hacking is a business. It's a criminal business, but it's a business. So nobody's interested in destroying Alet's hard drive. There's not much money you can make with that. It's not worth the effort. So it's big business.
Gerhard, welcome to the Technology Conference, the premier one in Wales. It's great to have you.
Thank you, Alet. I'm happy to be here.
So Gerhard, I think this probably is the question that you must get asked the most. When you joined as chairman, I think in 2012, very early on, never in your wildest dreams, right, would you imagine the success and sustained success of this company?
Yeah, it actually goes back to 2011 when the idea was born. I sat together with the CEO and founder of CrowdStrike, and he presented 9 PowerPoint slides to me, and we discussed 9 PowerPoint slides. And the question was, can we raise money with that? Which we eventually did. We raised $25 million based on 9 PowerPoint slides. That was all. But obviously, the sausage is not made with 9 PowerPoint slides. There's much more that goes into that. But at this stage, we had absolutely no idea how big this company is going to be. Our wildest dreams were revenue-wise in the 200, 300 range. And if we're lucky, maybe we reach $1 billion in market cap. But now we are actually, yesterday, we've been over 50 billion now, and we're over $1 billion in revenue. So this exceeded all our expectations.
Why did it succeed? How would you categorize its success?
Well, there's a few things when you look into it. And in hindsight, we're all a little bit smarter, obviously. But I think a key reason why CrowdStrike is very successful and will remain very successful is it's the orientation on long-term goals versus the temptation to fulfill short-term goals. We're building a SaaS-based, cloud-based business. And whenever you have machine learning, artificial intelligence involved, you need a lot of data, and data is accumulated over time. So you can't shortcut the success. I compare that very often with building a theme park. If you build Disney World or Universal Studios, you can't just build one ride and then invite a few customers and tell them, well, try it out. What do you think of our theme park? You have to build the entire theme park, which is expensive, and you run losses for a while. And then you invite a few customers to test it, and your margins look awful, but you build the theme park. And some of our competitors didn't do that. They built one ride and they said, well, look at the success and how great this ride is, while we were building the theme park. And I think it all comes down to the orientation on these long-term goals, sticking to it to make sure you reach what you had originally in mind. And I think that's one of the bases of the success of CrowdStrike.
I have never heard that analogy. Mm-hmm. It is so on point. I'm afraid to say I might well use that. And I think when you are a publicly traded company, the temptation, of course, to satisfy markets in the short term versus maybe the long must be constantly a battle, right?
Yeah, no, absolutely. If you look at the threat landscape in cybersecurity, cybercrime, it has fundamentally changed, and it actually changed about 12, 13 years ago. Hacking is not about destruction anymore. Hacking is a business. It's a criminal business, but it's a business. So nobody's interested in destroying Alet's hard drive. Yeah, there's not much money you can make with that. It's not worth the effort. So it's big business. And the large vendors in this market, we all know them, they had a franchise out there with antivirus. And it's very difficult when you have a well-oiled engine with a perpetual business model to change that, to adopt to the new requirements in the market, to the new trends. Simply that the bad actors, the threat actors, are not the same as they used to be. So we came out with a solution that was a better solution, obviously. And the clients were looking for that, because if you look at any publicized hack, whether it was the pipeline, SolarWinds, or anything that you read in the papers, what do all these companies have in place? They have antivirus in place, they have firewalls, they have intrusion prevention systems in place, they have everything, and they still got hacked. This is because the new world doesn't operate just on planting a virus and you go in. It is much, much more sophisticated, and a lot of companies just miss the boat.
So what is it that CrowdStrike has that differentiates itself from what you described?
It's a signature-less detection. What that means is the entire security industry has been based on the fact that you know what is bad. So you know what the viruses are, you know how the attacks look like. So you build a firewall that prevents you for the bad actors to get in, because you know how the bad actor looks like and viruses, etc. This is called signature-based. So you know the signature of the bad actor. The new world is very different. It's basically always starts with credential theft. So the bad guys try to get into the system by assuming the identity of an authorized user. So once the authorized user is not the actual user, it's a bad actor, none of these systems can identify what's going on. And this is when the bad stuff happens. So the first thing that CrowdStrike does, it monitors behavior and it monitors the tools that the bad actor are using. You can only break into a house in 5 different ways: door, roof, garage, window. It's not like you can't break in 50 different ways in a house. Same idea in hacking. There's only certain things you can do in a system. Hence the name CrowdStrike. The knowledge of the crowd, what we learn at other banks, for instance, around the world, or other energy providers around the world. We learn what kind of tools the bad guys are using. We hash those tools, and then we just monitor whether somebody is using these tools somewhere else. So if Alet is my friend that I invite to my home in my living room, and you sit on my couch, and I leave the room for a minute, and you stay there, that's Alet that sits there. But when I leave that for a minute and Alet suddenly jumps up, opens all the drawers, then Alet might not be the Alet that I thought he is. And that's what essentially CrowdStrike is doing.
You have a pretty eminent career in security yourself, not just because of your chairmanship of CrowdStrike, but you were with the CEO of McAfee at the time, the author, if you will, of one of the biggest security transactions at that time, which was the sale of McAfee to Intel.
Yeah.
Did you always have a career in security? Give us a little bit of your journey.
Not really. I mean, the last 20 years, I'm in security. And prior to that, I was in businesses that are very close to operating systems. So I've been a technologist for a long time with a business hat, and then it turned around and more business head than a technologist. There are much more smarter people out there. But for the last 20 years, I am in security. I started in cryptography, which is kind of the heart of security. And when I started cryptography, it was a nice to have feature for most companies. Very difficult to sell because you didn't add any value to the company. There was no business value. There's not more revenue that the company could achieve, nothing. It was just you encrypt your data. But obviously this changed pretty rapidly when hacking became a business and the threat actors stole data, stole intellectual property, etc. That's when companies realized, oh, we need to protect our information. That's the most valuable asset that we have besides people, obviously. And this is what kickstarted my own career in security with cryptography, which used to be a real dead product for a long time. And I struggled.
No longer a dead product, right?
No. I mean, people always see the end result of a career. They don't see the beginning of a career. And I can tell you, it's not a straight line. You're
German. You were educated, I believe, in Munich, if I'm not mistaken.
Did you say chairman or German?
Did you believe way back when you were getting your degree in Munich that you would end up living in the United States as you do now?
As a matter of fact, yes. So when I graduated, which was in 1983, way back, it was Microsoft came out in 1984 with their operating system. Yeah, it was obviously IT was in the very infancy. And when I moved to the US in 1994, most don't realize in 1994 there was no Silicon Valley. It was basically HP and Intel were the only two companies. Apple was bankrupt at this time. Google didn't exist. Netscape came just out with a product to browse something called the internet. So all the IT innovation, hardware or software, happened in the US, nowhere else. Today, it has changed. It's everywhere in the world. You have IT innovation. But in 1994, it was only in Silicon Valley. It was not even anywhere else in the US. Yeah, that's why I was always attracted to come over to the US and build my own business in the US, work in the US, and live in the US.
I had the pleasure of working for you as the CEO of a company that you were the chairman of, Telesign. And one of the things that was of great value to me, amongst many, and I mean that, was the fact that you had a global view. The fact that you were also European. And as you know, we had a strong European business and a strong European presence. It was pretty unique. How valuable in the development of either the work you did at McAfee or at CrowdStrike has your Europeanness been?
I think that's absolutely important for any CEO or any global executive to have international experience, whether you live in a country like yourself, like myself, or whether you are just very busy in other countries to get a different perspective. So you need to understand how the business is done and respect the different ways business is done. I do notice that especially over the last 10 years, things become a little bit the same. In 94 or 95, back in those days when IT really became important to companies, there were huge differences. If I look into the way you do business in the different countries, it becomes very much the same nowadays. There's still some local differences, but it becomes very much the same. In terms of the domain expertise, since I'm in security, there's still fundamental differences. So threat actors that operate in Germany or in the UK are different threat actors that operate in Japan or in China or in the US. And they use different tools and techniques and technologies. Yeah. So if you define the strategy of your company, you need to understand what the requirements are in these different countries, because the business may look different. Although you do business in a similar manner, but the actual business might look slightly different.
One of the things that's always struck me about the CrowdStrike experience is that your CEO has been there from the start. And to be a CEO that's gone through startup to scale up to IPO and now command, as you say, a $50 billion market cap organization, George must have understood the balance of learning and winning.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
What are his attributes that make him and you, to an extent, so unique to have had this partnership for so long?
Mm-hmm. So he has a very unique background because he's been in the corporate business. He was with Ernst & Young Consulting. He was an entrepreneur with Foundstone that he built and sold successfully. And he was a CTO at a technology firm as McAfee. Yeah? So he has a very unique background of being in corporate, entrepreneur, and consulting business. And he simply is a very smart guy as well. But I think there are a couple of elements that are unique with him that I don't see in many other CEOs. The first one is he can adopt very quickly. When you build a company from literally zero, from scratch, and you turn into a $50 billion powerhouse, you need to adopt to big numbers. You have 10 people first. Now we have 3,500 people. And you need to constantly adapt yourself to those circumstances. So things are not constant. The second one, which I miss with most CEOs that build companies, is the attention to details. Because at some point, CEOs forget to pay attention to details. He's still pretty much involved in the weeds, and goes out to customers, which is, I think, the other advantage. He's a frontline person, goes out to customers, understands what customers want.
The other thing about your relationship with George, if I'm not mistaken, is that you're both racing drivers.
That's true, yeah.
Do you have similar racing driving styles?
No, that's interesting. We have very different racing driving styles. And for years, we're actually competing in the same series. And against each other. And we have a pact that we don't disclose who the better driver is. Yeah. I'll give you a hint, but we don't disclose it. But we went different paths. I continue to drive prototypes, Le Mans series cars. He drives GT cars now, but we still race together in a team. When we do endurance racing, like 24-hour racing, we still work together. And believe it or not, racing has a lot to do with business as well. The same thing. You attack and you defend all the time.
I hope that people in Wales can access the Drive to Survive F1 series on Netflix. It's been a staple in my viewing diet over the coronavirus period. The use of telemetry and data. I mean, we all know the importance of data as an asset. I mean, extraordinary dashboard capabilities and telemetry, probably much more than we know, right?
Oh, the telemetry, if you look at Formula One racing, it's basically big data. Have a few when they show the garage before the cars go out from the pits. You see that the chief mechanic pulls out a huge, thick cable out in the front. That's the data cable. And then they have a high-speed, customized connection, wireless connection to the car to feed the data. And on each race weekend, each car feeds telemetry in the terabytes to the factory, which the engineers analyze. Obviously, all that data is very proprietary, very confidential, needs to be protected, and is protected by CrowdStrike. Several race teams have CrowdStrike.
I mean, the combination, may I say it, of your security career and your passion and love for racing, what a perfect combination.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
I don't know if you know, but one of the major companies that moved to Wales and produces one of the finest cars in the world is Aston Martin. They have a major center in Cardiff. So one day when I can get you to Wales, I don't know if you would be interested, but we'll take you to the Penderyn whiskey factory after we've taken you to the Aston Martin factory.
I would love to do it. I love Aston Martin. It's a great, great brand. Obviously, they have a 4-time world champion now also in their team. Great cars that they build, great sound, and I love whiskey as well.
I worked with you for, we had maybe 2.5 years. You remember, we went through many ups and downs as a business. When you look at your experience, what are the 2 or 3 things that you hold valuable as a leader?
There's basically 2 things that I personally value with management. And if you're on the board, you need to pay attention to that. The first one, and I'm sure you still remember, is what I call the say-do ratio. Say-do ratio is something, what you say, will you actually do it? So in an ideal case, it's a 1-to-1. You say something and you do it. In management, that's rarely to never the case, but it should be as close to number 1 as possible. If a manager has a 1-to-1/2 ratio, which means he says one thing, but he does half of it, that's when I become a little bit more irritated because it's less predictable. So I try to instill the confidence with management that they rather say less, but they do it then. So for me, the number one importance is the say-do ratio needs to be as close to 1-to-1 as it can be. And that's not only for good things, also for bad things. Tell us what you can do. The second one is trust and verify until you trust. You have to have a certain default trust in management. Otherwise, it doesn't work. But initially, until you have a working relationship with management, make sure you verify whether your trust is justified until you feel confident enough that it's justified, and then it's trust. So trust and verify until you trust. I think these are the two important things when you manage people on any kind of stage, any kind of level, whether you're the chairman or whether you're department head, is the predictability of individuals are very important. If you don't know anymore, or if you can't predict what an individual does, that's when the problems usually start.
I think Wales is trying to lift its say-do ratio and become more prominent in the world of technology and therefore economically. You've traveled around the world. Are there any countries or lessons that you would suggest Wales should think about, adopt, or learn from to expand its presence globally and to win in the technological game from a country perspective?
Yeah, I think that's absolutely the right move. A good example is when Silicon Valley really emerged in the US around Los Altos in this area. Yeah. That is when the rest of the United States realized we're lagging behind the technology development. So Raleigh in North Carolina, and you can do the same analogy with Wales, said we want to be the counterpart on the East Coast to Silicon Valley. And the local government and the municipalities had a lot of incentives. They worked with universities. They tried to attract young people and things that young people would like to see also in their private life, just to make it attractive to live there, because you could have the best universities and incentives. If you can't attract young people to come to a region, it's not working. And they were very successful in building up a high-tech region around Raleigh in North Carolina, which when you look at the map, nobody would have thought that this could be a center for technology. Now, 20 years later, you either go to Silicon Valley or you go to Raleigh, North Carolina if you want to be in the technology field. Obviously, Silicon Valley is still bigger, but they've been very, very successful in attracting those people. And on top of it, it attracts the supplier industry as well. So it is incredibly beneficial for any region to invest in technology, probably more than anything else, because it attracts high value businesses, educated people, the skill set goes up, the average salaries and compensations go up in that region. So if Wales plans to do that, I can only highly encourage them to follow a model like Raleigh did in North Carolina, or many other regions. Singapore is another region where they did it very successfully. So absolutely supportive to any initiative like this.
Well, Gerhard, we're right on about the time. Thank you for giving us your time. Congratulations on your personal success and all that you've helped CrowdStrike achieve and all that you helped me personally achieve. I value your advice constantly and your ongoing connection and friendship. Mm-hmm. But be safe on the racetrack, for goodness sake. And thank you for being a part of this.
Okay. Thanks a lot, Alec. Good luck.
Well, that was a fascinating 30 minutes or so, I'm sure you'll agree, with Gerhard. Really prompting us to think about short versus long, how we can deliver that 1-to-1 say-do ratio, trust and verify, many, many things that came out of that I'm sure were golden nuggets of learning and insight. Thanks for watching it. Enjoy the rest of the conference.